Picture this. It's 1999. You've already played Resident Evil. You've already played Silent Hill. You think you know what survival horror looks like, and then someone hands you Galerians, and everything changes. You play as Ryan, a kid who wakes up in a hospital with zero memory and almost immediately discovers he has psychic powers, no gun, no knife, just your mind as a weapon. The whole game takes place in this cold, sterile, almost clinical environment, and that's exactly what makes it so unsettling. There's no B-movie cheese here. It feels genuinely wrong in a way that gets under your skin. The reason most people missed it? Simple. Resident Evil 3 came out the same year. Silent Hill came out the same year. Galerians didn't stand a chance on the shelf. But if you give it a shot today, it holds up. The atmosphere is incredible, the story is legitimately dark, and using psychic powers to make enemies' heads explode never gets old, never gets old.
Are you a Galerian too?
Mother fears the virus program hidden in Lilia's mind. Mother can't even sleep at night.
Okay, complete tonal whiplash. But stick with me. Tail Concerto is one of the most charming things to ever exist on the PS1. You play as Waffle. Yes, Waffle. A dog police officer who pilots a mech suit on floating sky islands populated entirely by cat and dog people. I know how that sounds. Just trust me. The gameplay is this mix of 3D platforming and mech combat, and it's wrapped in this gorgeous anime aesthetic that looks like someone took a Saturday morning cartoon and turned it into a PS1 game. This came out in 1998. Almost nobody in the West touched it. It was a Japan exclusive for years, and by the time it got a Western release, it just vanished. When you think Square in the late 90s, you think RPGs. Final Fantasy, Xenogears, Parasite Eve. You do not think shoot 'em up, which is exactly why Einhänder hit different. Released in 1997, this is a side-scrolling shooter, a shmup, made by Square, with the same cinematic quality and production value they were pouring into their RPGs at the time. The visual design is stunning for the era. The soundtrack slaps hard. The gameplay is tight and satisfying in a way that fans of the genre immediately recognized. And then, nothing. It sold poorly. Square never made another shmup. The game got delisted, became incredibly rare physically, and disappeared into obscurity for over 2 decades. If you want proof that Square was more than just RPGs in their golden era, this is your proof. If you're new here and you made it this far, you clearly belong here. Hit subscribe, more deep dives incoming.
6 hands. Angel gave you this.
Okay, real talk. This next one genuinely makes me emotional. Future Cop, LAPD, made by EA Redwood Shores, the same studio that would go on to create Dead Space a full decade before that game existed. And in 1998, they made something that was arguably just as fun. You pilot this transforming mech, it walks like a tank, it converts into a hover bike, and you just wreck everything in sight. The gameplay is arcade-brained and endlessly satisfying. There's even a versus mode that essentially plays like a proto-tower defense game. This was a great game, not a hidden gem with an asterisk, genuinely objectively great, and almost nobody played it. EA didn't market it, it got lost in the shuffle. And because EA didn't see it as commercially viable, there was no sequel, no spiritual successor, no nothing. Just this one brilliant orphaned game sitting in a bargain bin. If you ever needed evidence that the games industry doesn't always reward quality, Future Cop LAPD is it. Now this one is the great injustice of the PS1 era. Alundra, released in 1997, published by Working Designs. And if you love The Legend of Zelda or Secret of Mana, this should have been required playing. You're a dream walker who can literally enter people's nightmares to save them. The puzzles are brilliant, the combat is tight, the story goes to places that most games at the time were afraid to go. There are genuine stakes, genuine tragedy, and a villain who is philosophically terrifying in a way that sticks with you. The PS1 had a massive RPG library, and in all that noise, Final Fantasy, Suikoden, Breath of Fire, Alundra just got overlooked. People associate the PS1 with 3D gaming. Alundra was 2D. It felt like the past when everything was pointing at the future. But here's the thing about the past. Sometimes the past is better. Alundra is better. You want to know a game that should have been huge? Brave Fencer Musashi Square, 1998, came out the same year as Final Fantasy Tactics, Xenogears, and Parasite Eve. 3 games that are, individually, considered genre-defining classics. Brave Fencer Musashi had no chance. And that's a tragedy, because this game is delightful. It's a real-time action RPG, no turn-based menus, just you swinging a sword in a chibi fantasy world with absurdist humor that predates a lot of what Western games were doing tonally. The ability system, where you absorb enemy powers, is genuinely clever, the world feels alive, and the writing is genuinely funny in a way that ages well. It got a sequel in 2005 that also went nowhere. The franchise just faded. But if you want to understand the full scope of what Square was doing in their absolute creative peak in the late 90s, Brave Fencer Musashi is an essential piece of that picture. All right, we need to talk about the funniest game on this entire list, Hogs of War, published by Infogrames in 2000, Worms, but in 3D, voiced by Rick Mayall. Every pig grunt, every battle cry, every death scream is delivered with this completely unhinged comedic energy that makes the whole game feel like a Monty Python sketch crossed with a war game. The tactical gameplay itself is solid, proper turn-based strategy with movement, grenades, airstrikes, all of it. But the humor is what makes this a lost gem. This game came out in Europe to solid reviews and promptly vanished, never got the sequel it deserved, never got a PC port, just existed, made a bunch of people in the UK absolutely lose it, and then quietly retired. Underrated, underpromoted, unforgettable. Four years before WarioWare, there was Incredible Crisis, published by Polygon Magic in 1999, and this game is unhinged in the best possible way. You play as an ordinary Japanese salaryman, and the entire game is a series of escalating minigame disasters that keep happening to him and his family throughout a single day. Avalanches, giant rolling boulders, alien abductions, dance-offs, a hospital patient escaping a surgery scene to do a rhythm minigame in the parking lot. I am not making any of this up. It's surreal, hilarious, and somehow emotionally resonant by the end, because the through line is this family just trying to get home for grandma's birthday. It's absurdist and sweet at the same time. This came out right before everyone went WarioWare crazy, and it never got the credit it deserved for basically inventing the format. If you want to impress a gamer friend with obscure knowledge, just drop Incredible Crisis into conversation. Watch their face, worth it every time. Back to the shoot 'em up well for a second. Philosoma, Sony Computer Entertainment 1995. One of the first shmups released on the PS1. Here's what made it different. Most shooters scroll in one direction, horizontal, vertical. Pick one, commit. Philosoma does both, switching between horizontal and vertical scrolling mid-stage, which in 1995 was a genuinely novel design choice. The story has this dark sci-fi weight to it, the visuals pushed what the PS1 could do at launch, and the difficulty is no joke. This is a proper arcade-style challenge, but it got buried. Gradius Gaiden, R-Type Delta, Thunder Force V. The PS1 had elite competition in the shmup genre, and Philosoma got lost in that crowd. If you're a shmup fan and you haven't played this, it's essential. If you're not a shmup fan, this is actually a solid entry point, because the shifting scroll directions keep it from ever feeling stale. The late 90s JRPG era was stacked, like almost unfairly stacked. Wild Arms 2 walked quietly in 1999 and did everything right. The Wild West fantasy setting, guns, spells, tumbleweeds, and ancient evil is one of the most distinctive aesthetic mixes in the genre. The turn-based combat is refined and satisfying. The story takes itself seriously without losing its sense of adventure. But the JRPG market was so saturated that even good games got lost. Wild Arms 2 was a casualty of its own era, too good to be forgotten by the people who played it, too overlooked to build the cultural footprint it deserved. There's a whole fandom out there keeping this franchise alive on pure passion alone. That says everything. The movie, divisive. The game, actually kind of terrifying. Alien Resurrection on PS1 came out in 2000, developed by Argonaut Software, and here's the thing that makes this interesting. The controls were legitimately ahead of their time for a console FPS, dual analog stick support done right, before most games figured that out. But what makes it genuinely worth talking about is the atmosphere, the dark corridors, the audio design, the way the game makes you feel hunted rather than powerful. Some people argue this game captures the dread of the Alien franchise better than the film it's based on. And honestly, it's hard to disagree. It commits to the horror in a way that the film, for all its craft, doesn't quite manage. Got buried under the mediocre reputation of the movie, deserved way better than that. Most people know Legacy of Kain through Soul Reaver, Raziel, the Spectral Realm, the iconic design, but the original Blood Omen is where the whole mythology was born, and almost nobody talks about it anymore. 1996, you play as Kain, a nobleman murdered and resurrected as a vampire against his will. And from that premise, the game builds one of the most sophisticated narratives the PS1 ever saw. The voice acting is theatrical and brilliant. The Gothic world building is dense and atmospheric. The moral questions the game asks about fate, free will, and what you're willing to sacrifice, they hit differently when you're actually the one making the choices. This was a narrative-driven action RPG, a full decade before that phrase became a genre buzzword. It laid the foundation for everything that came after in the series, and it deserves to be remembered as the original act of genius, not just a footnote before Soul Reaver. Okay, we need a palate cleanser, and nothing cleanses a palate like complete and utter chaos. No one can stop Mr. Domino. Art Dink 1998. You control a little character, Mr. Domino, who cannot stop running, ever. He just runs. Your job is to place dominoes on the floor at the right moment to trigger chain reactions that interact with the surreal little scenarios happening around you. It sounds simple. It is absolutely not simple. The scenarios get increasingly bizarre. There's a joy to it that's completely unconditional. It doesn't care if you think it's cool, it just wants to do its thing. This game never got a Western release. Getting it to run today takes some effort, but it's worth every minute of that effort for the sheer energy it radiates. Pure, unfiltered, domino-related chaos. Muppet Monster Adventure 2000, developed by Mass Media Inc. This is a proper, large-scale 3D platformer in the Banjo-Kazooie tradition. Big environments, collectibles everywhere, costume mechanics that transform your character. The Muppets are all there, the humor is intact, and the gameplay is legitimately good. Tighter and more generous than a lot of the licensed shovelware that flooded the PS1 in its final years. Because it wore the Muppet branding, Games Media dismissed it. Because it was late in the PS1's life cycle, nobody was looking. Because it was a kid's game, the core gaming audience didn't give it a shot. And so this quietly solid platformer sat unplayed while everyone moved on to the PS2. Low-key, no asterisk, one of the best platformers on the system. I stand by it.
Okay, boys, it's bedtime.
And we're ending with something that feels almost legendary, just not for the reasons it should. Heart of Darkness, 1998, developed by Amazing Studio. This game was in development for 6 years on a PS1 game that was basically unheard of. And you can feel every one of those years in the animation. The character movement is fluid and expressive in a way that puts most games of the era to shame. The environments are beautifully detailed. The tone is this dark fairy tale, a kid trying to rescue his dog from a world of living shadow. It came out to modest reviews and disappeared almost immediately. The 6-year development became a cautionary industry tale rather than a success story. But play it today, and what you see is a piece of craft. Genuine, painstaking, passionate craft. The kind that only comes from people who cared too much and wouldn't let go. Which is honestly a pretty good note to end on. If you try even one game off this list and it does something for you, drop it in the comments. Tell me about it. That's the whole point of this. The PS1 era was massive.